Hey guys, I want to put a video together about web scraping using using Python with Beautiful Soup and Selenium. So the website that I wanted to take a look at is this McMaster-Carr website. It is a website of a vendor that a lot of companies use. It sells just basic tools and stuff like that. So when you're looking at a website like this, the first thing you want to do to determine how much you really have to put into um, your web scraping tool um, is you go to the website and then you'll push F12 and it'll open up this window over here for you. Then if you push Control Shift P, make sure you're focused on that window and it'll bring this up. Then if you start typing disable, you'll see it has disabled JavaScript. So if I click that and then I go to one of these links, you'll see our website requires JavaScript. Please enable it. So now I know that this website is going to need JavaScript. So if I use a normal request or GET, I'm not going to be able to get everything that I need to by web scraping. So now we know that this website uses JavaScript. Do Control Shift P again. I can type enable and we'll bring that back, and then voila, it brings up the things that it wanted to bring up with JavaScript. So now we know a little bit more about our website. We know that we're probably going to want to use Selenium to be able to scrape it. So I'm using a Jupyter notebook here to write my Python. You can write your Python in something else if you really want to. But this is just the way I have learned and prefer to do it. So first of all, we want to import a few things. We'll import requests. We'll import Beautiful Soup. That's one that we're definitely going to want. Make sure you get those capitals in Beautiful Soup. It has a capital B and a capital S. It won't work if you miss out on those capitals. We're going to want to import pandas. And then we've got quite a few things that I import from Selenium. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste these in. And these may not all be necessary for exactly what you're trying to do, but they're just some things that I've decided to throw into my tool. So something that I always like to do, and we've got an error there. Let's see if we can get this to run. Thinking about it. And so now we got all that. Let's try this again. It doesn't like the WebDriver manager now. Okay, now let's try it. And boom, we got everything that we need. So you can use the pip install to get Selenium and WebDriver Manager if those are things that you don't have on your computer yet. So now what I always like to do is see how long it takes for my code to run. So we'll do start equals time.time, and we'll see. Maybe we'll end up needing to install a few other things later on. And actually, that one will require me to import time. And then we can go ahead and start onto the rest of our code. So first things first, we'll take a look at really what we're trying to do with this. What I'm hoping to do is put together a list of all of these different links. Because ultimately, when you're trying to scrape a site, I'm not going to go through the entire project, but you'll oftentimes need to make more links for your code to go to. So say, for example, I want to get the price of these washers. If I click on the washer, it goes in and it has more washers. And it has more. And more and more. And so what I would have to do is go through and get all of those URLs. So ultimately, I need the whole URL to look like this. And then that allows me to pull these pricing and these part numbers. So what we want to do is create a list. I'll call it item categories list. And we'll just set that to an empty list. And then we'll start putting together what we need for our WebDriver. So when you use Selenium, you'll need a WebDriver. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that would require. We'll go to Chrome driver. Anytime you use Chrome driver, you're going to need this driver in here. So you'll want to go to this website, the Chromium, chromedriver.chromium.org/downloads. And it has all of these different drivers. I've already got the driver. What you'll probably want to do, there's a few things that you can do with it. You can set it to path. I always just store the driver in the same folder that my project is in, though, and that allows it to work. Okay, so we set options equals Chrome options, and then we'll want it to be headless as well. What that means is instead of opening up a window for Google Chrome every time you try to run this, it does it without opening it up. So you can't actually see what it's doing. Whereas if you didn't set it to headless, every single time it would open up a new Chrome window for you. Which I guess you can do if you want, but it just is a little more demand on your computer. And then we'll just throw in a few other things here as well, just to try to get the options to do as much as we can. So we'll paste that in there, and then we'll go ahead and create our driver. And just to save all of us some time, I'll go ahead and paste the rest of that in as well. So that's what you're going to end up wanting in that driver. It will install it and allow you to use it. Now, just because I've worked on this a little bit, I know that I want it to pull everything off of the website. And for a while there, when I was trying to get the whole thing to work, it was pulling in less than what I wanted it to pull in. It wasn't getting all of this stuff that I needed. So I went ahead and decided that it would be good to set up a while loop based on the list that we're creating. So we have this list. Well, length item categories list is less than. I went with 129. And we want it to loop as long as it's not getting the stuff that we need. So if it doesn't pull in at least 129 items, it's going to go through and try it again. And the cool thing about that is we want it to start from the beginning each time it does that. We don't want it to keep duplicating the initial items that were on that list. So we'll go ahead and say, well, item categories, while it's less than 129, reset that list to a blank list. We're going to go ahead and create another list, URL list. And we'll even create a deeper URL list. And we may not get into all of this, but I guess just to explain the thought behind creating that deeper URL list. As I was showing you guys before, each of these leads to a new set of items. So I would have this initial URL list from this page, and then I would go through and start adding these other URLs that come from these links to that deeper URL list. So that's why we would create that deeper URL list. And then let's go ahead and set our initial URL. That's going to be mcmaster.com. We'll bring that right on over, and boom, we've got that. Okay, now this is where we'll want to build a function. And so what that function is going to entail is us using Selenium. So we'll say, we'll just name it use Selenium. And it's going to be a string that's coming into that function. So we'll set it to that. And we're going to have it try to use the driver that we set up. And it's going to try to get, using the request library, the URL that's being fed into it. If it can't, then we'll set up, we'll have use WebDriver exception. And it will return just a warning for us, telling us that the page is down. And then we'll set up our soup, because we're going to be using Beautiful Soup. And it uses driver.page source. And we're going to have it use LXML to parse. So there we have that. And then when it's all said and done, it will return that soup for us. So that's what we want in our function. Okay, so we'll come back down to here and go ahead and get this party started making our, I'll call it main soup. Oftentimes you'll just see soup, but for some reason I did main soup. Really doesn't matter, it's just the name of your function, of your variable. Use Selenium, we'll feed in the URL that we set up right here. I guess if you wanted to, rather than creating the variable, you could just feed that mcmaster.com into your use Selenium function, and that would work just as well. So now let's get into the Beautiful Soup action. We'll call this main div. And this is where you'll kind of start to see, I guess let's go back to the main page here. So something that you'll want to do is when you open up this window, you'll want to start investigating this site a little bit. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to click on this little guy right here, this arrow pointing into a box. You'll see you start to be able to highlight everything. And as you highlight those, that window on the right is showing you where you're at in the HTML. So if I wanted to get everything here, I could go ahead and click right there, and I see div. So we're looking at a div tag. Its ID is homepage. Its class is shell layout. Main content. So what we want to do first of all is just grab all of this so that we're leaving out these links over here. We don't really want this order history or any of this stuff that's set up all around. We want what's in the blue here. So we'll say main div equals, or sorry, yeah, main div equals main soup. So we're looking at the soup that we've pulled out of our function. And we're gonna have it find. And because we saw it's a div tag, we'll say div, and then we'll say class, because we're going to narrow it down by the class that was showing in that HTML. And that class is, like we were looking at, that homepage content, main content, it's a container. So we'll go ahead and paste that in here. Shell layout main content web part content underscore container. So if we look here, main content web part content container, web part container there. So now if we come back over to here, then we can go ahead and say div equals main div, now that we've just created, dot find all. So there's a key difference there between find and find all. Find all is going to create multiple items for you. It'll create them and put them in a list for you. Whereas find is just finding that one thing that you're searching for. So it's going to find every instance of HTML that matches whatever you feed into it. So once again, we're looking for div tags. And I'm actually going to use a regular expression here. Class re.compile. So we're using a regular expression. And subcat dot wildcard. And we'll want to make sure that subcat dot wildcard is in single quotes. And so now what we're doing is looking for the individual subcategories there. So if we go ahead and look, we see we're trying to find each of these subcategories here. So fasteners is one subcategory, and it'll find that for us. If we came down to here, we would see, if we can get it to highlight correctly. Maybe we can't. But if I click on that, you'll see it's looking at that, but the subcategory is right here. So we're going to find each instance where we have subcat in the class. So that's what we're doing there. Let's go ahead and continue on. And we named that div. Now what we're going to want to do is, because we used find all, it's going to create a list for us, and we want to loop through that list. So we're going to say for section in div. So we're going to loop through each of those sections. Li equals section dot find all, and we're going to find each instance of Li. And then we're going to loop through those LIs. So once again, we're finding everything that has an LI within each of those sections. So if we look here, we can go ahead and start to find, let's see here, what exactly, there it is. So we see that LI, 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 LI. We're going to get each of those items out of that section that we created. And then from there, we can go in and get the A and the href that we want. So for category, we'll go ahead and call it category, in li, we'll create an item type equals, category dot find. And like we were looking at, we saw that there was an A tag that had that href that we wanted. So find A, and then we're going to go ahead and put comma href equals true. And then we'll go ahead and say if that item type that we're creating, and we'll just go ahead and get that, if item type does not equal none, because sometimes you'll just get weird things where it returns nothing for you. And then we'll say if, and I'll go ahead and explain this in a second. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste it over because it's a big one. If item type href is in any of these. And the reason that I'm doing that, you won't run into it a lot in other websites. I mean, I guess there are chances of something like this. But what I'm trying to do is avoid all of this. We shouldn't have any issues running into these, but I don't want any of these links over here on the left side. I only want the items that are coming out of here. So this is just another kind of safeguard to say, hey, if that href that I'm pulling matches any of those things, then we'll just continue to the next loop. We don't want any of that. Then we'll go back to right here. We're still inside of the if item type does not equal none. So if it doesn't equal none, then we'll say item type, item type equals item type href. So we want to pull that href because that href is what we use to create the URL that we're trying to get. Okay, now we're back out of that if item type does not equal none, but we're going to go ahead and say if, and actually we don't need that. Well, we'll go ahead and do it anyway, just make sure that we don't mess anything up here. If item type does not equal none, we'll check for that again. We're going to go ahead and append that item type to that item categories list that we created. And now we'll go ahead and back all the way back out of these instances, or I guess these loops, this while loop and this for loop. And we'll go ahead and say for item in our item categories list. We'll go ahead and just grab that really quick here. We'll create this loop. Item equals and we'll go ahead and create another function here. We're going to call it fixed string. Fixed string, I'll throw an underscore in there just because I like it. And we'll feed in that item into that function. So we'll come back up here, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste in this function because it's also a long one. And really what it's doing, it's just going through and trying to make sure that the string that we're feeding in is in the proper format. Now, really, I put this together before I started using the href. The href shouldn't have any issues, but I did just want to keep this in here just to double check, make sure everything's clean. I like having different safeguards in my code to make sure we get exactly what we're looking for. So we feed that into that fixed string function. It makes sure everything's nice and clean for us. And then we can go ahead and say URL list, that list that we created, dot append, and we're going to go ahead and append our initial URL, so that McMasterCard URL that we have right here. And we're going to go ahead and concatenate that with, we'll say string item, and we'll go ahead and add on that so that we get the full URL that we're wanting. Now we're going to go ahead and remove duplicates from that list that we have. So we've looped through everything, added it all into our list, and now URL list equals, go ahead and set URL list. Whoopsie daisy. We want to make sure that that is start set and put it inside parentheses. There we go. That should remove duplicates for us. And then we'll go ahead and say end equals time dot time. Then we can go ahead and say time elapsed equals, that would be end minus start. And then we can go ahead and I'll just paste in these last two lines here. We'll print out how much time it took to run that, and then we'll go ahead and print out the length of our lists along with the list itself. Let's go ahead and see if it works. Let's see here. Time is not defined. We didn't end up running this once I imported time. There it goes. It's installing the driver. And let's see. What doesn't it like? WebDriver Chrome module object is not callable. Okay, let's see here. Driver equals WebDriver.Chrome. let's see. Let's take a look over here. Let's see why that isn't giving us what we want it to. Okay, so it got past that part, but we did not put in our regular expression. So we want to make sure that we have our regular expression in there. So just a few little things that we got to make sure that we catch. And boom, it worked for us. It took 9 seconds and it pulled out a list of 582 URLs that we ended up having a list of. So there you have it, guys. That's how to do a quick web scrape of a site like McMaster-Carr. You can use a lot of these principles of Beautiful Soup and Selenium on other websites as well. So go ahead, like and subscribe. I hope it was helpful, and we'll see you guys later.